This morning's reading is taken from the book Love and Death, written by the Reverend Forrest Church. Those of you who've been around a while know that this is one of my favorite books, and you've heard readings from it before. At the start of this chapter, he has 4 lines. These lines are as follows. Life is a gift, not a given. One day we will go to sleep and not wake up again. The path of life is strewn with trapdoors. Every day is a miracle. He goes on to write, my children helped teach me this lesson. One day we were almost killed crossing the street right in front of our apartment building. I was walking them to their last day in school. 3/4 of the way across, with the light in our favor and all of us dutifully holding hands, a car burst out of nowhere, hurtling around the corner at breakneck speed, ricocheting off the curb and swerving into our path. Missing us by inches, the car skidded, fishtailed back into control, and disappeared down the avenue. I could barely breathe, my heart beating like a pile driver. In stark contrast, my kids just laughed, romping blithely down the sidewalk, jumping from tree to tree, as they always did, trying to touch the leaves. Deeply shaken, I did the obvious thing. I got angry. Not at the driver, of course. She was long gone. I vented my anger at the children. Did you see that car? It could have killed us. It almost hit us. It really did. We might all have been killed. But neither of them had been doing anything wrong. They were holding my hands, walking with the signal. I had nothing to teach them. Only this, perhaps. Our lives are beset with trap doors. Whenever the ground seems most secure, something out there has its hand on the lever. When a trap door springs, we haven't got time for regrets or second chances. It just happens. Swoosh. No goodbyes. Words of Forrest Church, which we will revisit shortly in the message. Has this ever happened to you where you are absolutely certain of something? You know it deep in your bones. You are absolutely sure. And then you find out that you're absolutely wrong? Has it happened? It's happened to me a lot. I can give you an example of it. The little one that comes to mind, though, was for years and years and years, I absolutely was sure that leaving on a jet plane was like Peter, Paul, and Mary. I knew it. And if anybody argued with me, I'd argue right back. And then I looked it up. Who wrote Peter, Paul, and who wrote Leaving on a Jet Plane? John Denver. Right, I was wrong. So what happens when that happens to you? For me, what happens is it calls into question all the other things that I think I know. And all of a sudden, I'm just full of doubts. Completely full of doubts. So what I wanted to do for just a few minutes is to think about what are some of the things that we know for sure. Some of the things that we know to be true. Absolutely. And I'm going to write them down on a flip chart. And Sandra has a microphone that she's going to bring around. So raise your hand. Tell us what you know for sure to be true.
Republicans or obstructionists?
Okay, well, we'll write that down.
And so we're Democrats. My wife is not working right now.
Let's say politicians, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay. What else? What do we know for sure?
The sun will come up tomorrow.
Sun will come up tomorrow. That's probably a little less controversial.
We will all die.
We will all die.
I am sure that the OR schedule I saw on Friday will be different tomorrow.
What is it that you know to be true?
Dad is watching over me.
I'm sorry?
My dad is watching over me.
My dad is watching over me.
Humankind needs air and nourishment to survive.
Humans need air and what?
Food.
Food.
Needs nourishment and air to survive.
All right.
I exist.
Okay, just a couple more.
People are inherently good.
Ooh. Now you might get some debate on that.
I love my dog.
All right, good. Thank you. So, I went through this exercise myself as I was preparing for today, and it's really not easy to come up with things that we're absolutely certain of, is it? Things that we know to be true. And what that means is that we're always in a state of doubt or uncertainty, almost always. Even some of the things that we are absolutely sure of may in fact not be the case. So for example, I exist. Has anybody ever thought about the possibility that we're actually in a dream, somebody's dream, and we don't actually exist? I mean, can you tell me absolutely that that's not the case? The sun will come up tomorrow is a pretty reliable thing. And a lot of the laws of physics and sort of the physical laws are pretty constant. But even that is under some change. It used to be that people thought absolutely that gravity is fixed, that time is fixed. Einstein eventually told us that time slows down when you near the speed of light. And then there's the problem of Schrodinger's cat. Who here knows about Schrodinger's cat? A few people. So I'll tell you a little bit about, because this shows how even the hard sciences aren't necessarily certain. So Erwin Schrödinger was a physicist, and he posited this experiment, and it was a thought experiment, so no cats were harmed in this experiment, just so you know. So you take a cat and you put him in a steel box, and you close the box so you can't see the cat. And inside the box with the cat is something that has a 50-50 chance of killing the cat. It might be that some detonation is going to go off, or there's a vial of poison. It depends on the experiment. But again, this is a thought experiment. The cat's okay. But there's a 50-50 chance. There's an equal chance that the cat will be killed inside the box, or the cat will be alive inside the box. So here you have a cat in a box. Is the cat dead or alive? Erwin Schrödinger said yes. The cat is both dead and alive until you open the box and observe it. And it is our act of observing it that determines its state. Until you look at the cat, it is at once both dead and alive, because there are equal chances that it's both dead and alive. So something is alive and dead at the same time calls into question even the question of, do I exist in that same way? And so if even the natural laws are uncertain, that just reinforces this idea that we, as human beings, live in a state of doubt and uncertainty. It's the sea that we're swimming in, the ocean that we swim in, is doubt and uncertainty. That's an inspiring message on a Sunday morning, isn't it? But the reality is, anything can happen at any time, and this is a painful reality to face, particularly when we're caused to face it. You heard in our reading this morning, Forest Church describing that harrowing walk to school one morning when the car came careening down the street and nearly took out him and his kids. Our lives, he said, are beset with trap doors. Whenever the ground seems most secure, something out there has its hand on the lever. Contrary to the old adage, what we don't know can in fact kill us. All of us are living on borrowed time, and when the clock runs out is probably the biggest uncertainty in our lives. That is the hardest doubt to face. When will that happen? So what do we do in the face of all this uncertainty, all this doubt? Deny it. Denial is a great coping mechanism. We pretend. We pretend that our lives are stable and predictable, and this isn't a bad thing. Notwithstanding the urgings of country singer Tim McGraw, I don't think it's possible to live like we're dying. And that's not to say that we shouldn't treasure each day. As Forest Church said, our lives are a gift, not a given. But as human animals, we would not be able to function with an ever-present awareness of all of the uncertainties that we face in our lives. So, we live in a form of denial. We make plans. We look forward to the future. We walk towards the future with confidence. Denial, as I say, I think is a perfectly acceptable coping strategy for this reality of all our uncertainty. But there comes a time, there come many times in our lives when denial isn't going to work, when we actually are facing an uncertain decision, an uncertain choice, and we have to make a decision. So what happens when we come face to face with our doubts and uncertainties? Now, it doesn't have to be something as grave as a life and death decision. It might be something about taking the decision of whether to take a new job or not, about going out on a second date with that guy we met, about whether we want to try for another child or be happy with the ones we have. There are countless numbers of decisions that we make every day. So then the question becomes, how do we respond in these moments of doubt? When we're not sure which way to turn, which path to follow. When perhaps our mind is telling us one thing, but our gut is telling us the exact opposite. One of our first instincts, I think, in those situations is to just stand still, to wait it out, to stop where we are, to maybe avoid and evade having to make the decision. And that's because doubt has a faithful sidekick, just like the Lone Ranger had Tonto and Batman had Robin. And doubt's faithful sidekick is fear. Fear always lurks and lingers in the background when doubt arises. Fear of an unknown outcome, fear of making the wrong decision, fear of what others will think of us if we do something. When we don't know which way to turn, fear can paralyze us. It can make us from making any decision at all. And so we pull the blankets up over our head and hope that it goes away and we don't have to make a choice. And sometimes that works. Avoidance, sometimes. But not always. And if you're like me, when you get into these situations, you go into sort of a super rational mode. You're hyper vigilant. You try to start gathering as much information as you can. We want to eliminate all the variables to the decision. by gathering facts and data. We go on the internet, we talk to everyone we can. We're like sponges just absorbing information. We want to reduce the risk of making the so-called wrong choice. And in this state, we weigh our options. I've done it, I'm sure many of you have done it. You pull out that piece of paper, you put the line down the middle, you put the pros on one side and the cons on the other. Have you done that before? I don't know about you, but when I get that list done, I'm not a whole lot closer to making the choice. Even if there are 2 things on one side and 18 things on the other. And that's because we're not strictly rational beings. If we made all our decisions based on a cost-benefit ratio, if we totally relied on the analysis that we do, well, let's just say that Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock would have had nothing to argue about all those episodes, right? When Irene and I were in Peru last February, we went through a period of doubt. We spent 2 weeks in Arequipa in the southern part of the country, and we were ready to embark on the next stage of our journey. We had planned to spend 4 weeks in the Sacred Valley near the ancient Incan ruins of Machu Picchu. We had rented a small cottage, and we were going to live in this little village, just live among the locals, and then take time to tour the various sites. The day before we were supposed to leave for that part of the country, we received word that the State Department had issued a warning, a pretty dire warning, that Americans were to be the targets of kidnapping in the very part of the country we were planning to go. So what do we do? What do we do? Do we just ignore the warning and go and hope for the best? Or do we decide not to go? So we went into that heavy-duty analytic mode. We called the embassy in Lima and talked to people there. We called the State Department in Washington, talked to someone who worked on the South American desk. We worked with them to parse through the language of the warning itself, to try to understand where it was coming from, what it meant exactly. It was pretty serious because we found out that the embassy in Lima was not allowing their personnel to travel to the area, and that some of the tourists who were already there were on lockdown. So we had to take this seriously. We had to decide, do we follow our plans that had been in the making for more than a year, or not? And so, after we had gathered all this information, talked to all the experts, we talked to our hosts in Urubamba to find out what was going there. We had all the information we could possibly gather. We were very well informed, but we still had to decide what to do. I think the problem with analyzing the data, weighing the cost-benefit ratios, is that it really takes us right back, when we're done, to this underlying human condition, that there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees. Even if we make what we think to be is the best decision in a situation of doubt, we have no idea really what the outcome is going to be, and whether that outcome will be to our benefit. How many times have we, I know I have, I'm sure you have, how many times have we made a decision, gone in a particular direction, and what's happened after that was completely unexpected? We could not have predicted it at all. It's reminiscent of the Buddhist parable that I've told before, and I'll tell again. It's about a farmer whose horse escapes out of his pasture and runs off, and the neighbor comes to the farmer and says, "Oh, you've lost your horse. How are you going to plow your fields? This is terrible." And the farmer replies, "Maybe yes, maybe no. Time will tell." And a few days later, the horse comes running back into the field, and he's leading a whole herd of wild horses. And the neighbor sees it and comes running to the farmer and says, "This is wonderful. Look how many horses you have now. You're going to be rich." And the farmer says to the neighbor, maybe yes, maybe no, time will tell. And then the next day, the farmer's son is out trying to break one of the wild horses. He's riding him, and the horse throws him, and he falls on the ground and breaks his leg. And of course, the neighbor comes running over. Oh, this is awful. Your son has broken his leg. He won't be able to help you around the farm. This is just a tragic event. And the farmer says, maybe yes, maybe no, time will tell. And then a week later, the army comes to conscript the young man, but they pass him by because his leg is broken. You get the idea. We don't know. We don't know what the outcome of any particular decision or event will be. It's nearly impossible, maybe even impossible itself, to predict how one of our decisions will play out over the long view of our lives. And I would say we are not in complete control of our own destiny. And so what makes moments of doubt so challenging is that they compel us to face what is perhaps the deepest spiritual question that we as human beings can face. That question, do you trust? Do you trust? Do we trust that in the grand scheme of things, things will work out for the best? Or to put it another way, do we believe that the universe is so ordered that it rewards or at least supports good intentions and decisions made with integrity? Do we believe that? Or do we believe that it's all just random and up to chance, that we're like some cosmic pinball that keeps bouncing off of things and off of each other, and there's nobody really playing those flippers? That's the question that doubt raises for us. Do we trust? When in doubt, that's the question. It was hard to leave Peru, only 2 weeks into a planned 6-week adventure, but we decided not to go to the Sacred Valley. Speaking for myself, you can ask Irene what her thought process was, but for me, it wasn't that I feared being kidnapped, because I really didn't expect that to happen, but I decided that for 4 weeks I would be worried, I wouldn't be able to relax, that we wouldn't be able to enjoy ourselves while we were there. And so we flew back to Miami, and we rented a car, and we took 4 weeks to get from Miami back to Pennsylvania. And those of you who followed it on Facebook know that we had all sorts of interesting adventures and ate a lot of barbecue. On the very day that we had planned our tour of Machu Picchu, because you have to buy tickets in advance now because so many people want to visit, on the day that we were supposed to be at those Incan ruins, we were with our friends who had planned to come to Peru with us for a couple of weeks. They had flown to New Orleans, and we met them, and we were driving. We were driving somewhere in rural Mississippi. As we drove, we saw one of those historic markers you see on the side of the road, and all it said was Indian Mound. Indian Mound. So we decided to stop and check it out. We had no idea what it was. And we pulled in, and the parking area was next to this steep, steep hill, several hundred feet high, in what was otherwise, the Mississippi Delta is pretty flat. And we read on the placard about this Indian mound that it was made by people. It was made thousands of years ago by indigenous peoples in this area. And that they had built it, it was speculated, and through artifacts they had found, scientists had determined that this place was used as a temple and a place of communal ceremonies. So the four of us climbed up to the top of the Indian mound, and we looked out at the fields and the forests around. It wasn't Machu Picchu, but it was where we were. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was where we were supposed to be. This day and every day, I wish you peace. Amen.
Our closing words today come from the author Neil Gaiman in his book of short stories entitled Fragile Things. Do not lose hope. What you seek will be found. Trust ghosts. Trust those that you have helped to help you in return. Trust dreams. Trust your heart, and trust your story.